way was ABC. And NBC, of course, was in, Rockefeller, still is in Rockefeller Plaza. So I went and I met had a meeting with a gentleman by the name of Tom Barnard. And he said, I understand, you're here for a job. Do you know what the job is? And I said, no. And he said, well, it's a payroll clerk job. So I said, payroll clerk? And he said, well, the good part about it is it's in the broadcast operations and engineering division. So I said, well, he said, well, it's not here. It's up like where the studios are. Well, my ears went up in the air like, My Favorite Martian. And he said, however, before we send you on the interview, there's a little aptitude test that we have to give you.
Another one.
So I said, well, that's fine. So they brought me to a room and they give you pencils and,
right.
everything, crayons. And it was the same exact aptitude test that I took at the employment agency.
Oh, my goodness.
So, of course, I mastered it because I knew that 2 and 3 was not 60. And he said, okay, I can send you on an interview, but you have to go from here to 66th Street. Do you know how to do that? 54, 66, it's 12 blocks away. It's north. I know that. I did have a lot of, listen, as a kid growing up in the city, I did have street smarts, so I knew my way to get around. And they said, you're going to go and you're going to visit a man by the name of Deet, D-E-E-T, Jonker. And I thought, pardon my expression, what the hell kind of name is that? I mean, wow. What is that? Anyway, so I got there. Oh, I had like 2 hours. That's I had like 2 hours in between. And I told you I had this finely, nicely cropped long hair. I decided maybe it would be better, I would put a better foot forward if in the 2 hours prior to meeting this guy, I took a nice haircut. Maybe. What could hurt? The hair will always grow back. I wasn't like a successful musician that had to have long hair.
You weren't married to the hair.
So I got a nice short haircut. And I went and I met him. And he said, do you mind if I ask you what you're looking for? And I said, well, Mr. Jonker, I'm 18 years old. I'm looking, obviously, for something full-time. But I'm looking for something that would afford me a future, somewhere where I can grow. I don't want to be just, another guy. I mean, I'm a talented, I can use my mind. I think I have something to bring to the table. And I know that I can honestly tell you that if you hire me, I can tell you that you are never going to regret it. Now, I was 18 years old, and I told him that. Now,
good sales pitch.
I mean, you have to have some kind of confidence. And just a little quick side story to this: one of the first jobs I ever had was a summer job, and they put on the job application. It was a job like installing time locks and burglar alarms and things. It was simple.
Right.
And they put on the job application nicknames, anything other that you're known as other than. So I wrote down in quotations. I put down on the application in quotations. I wrote that asshole.
Oh my goodness.
So the guy who interviewed me was looking this over and he said, something that's a little puzzling. Do you mind if I ask you why you put that down? Why would you do that? And I said, his name was Mr. Believe. I forget his name. Anyway, He said, I said, listen, if I'm lucky enough to get this job, pretty soon you're going to be looking for me, and you're not going to know where I am, and you're going to say, where the hell is that asshole? So I got that job. Anyway, so I went and I interviewed with this guy at ABC, and he explained I was going to be doing payrolls for all of these various different departments. And ABC had, by far, the most television production business in New York City. So I was going to be busy. He said, but what I can tell you is if you're lucky enough to get the job, I would encourage you to spend a lot of time in the studios because you're going to be paying these people and you get to know them, so that when you screw up their checks, they'll know who to come and kill. Anyway, so he said, listen, it was about a 40-minute interview. He said, listen, you go home and think long and hard if this is something that you want to do. And if we're interested, we'll get in touch with you. I took the train back to the Bronx, and I was so excited. I thought, wow, I got a real chance. And sure enough, that afternoon, the phone rang, and it was him. And he said, are you still interested in the job? I said, I haven't even taken my underwear off. Of course I'm interested. I'm here. And I started at ABC on November 22nd of 1971.
Is that right around Thanksgiving?
Yes. And they even paid me for Thanksgiving. Now,
wow.
I made $97 a week, but because it was not what they call a fee-paid job, I had to pay for the job from the employment agency because they got me the job to ABC. ABC did not pay the fee to the employment agency. ABC was even a little bit ABC even then. But I did, and I was coming home with about, I guess about $65 a week. And I was, but this is 1971, and I was, still living at home. And what can I say? I mean, I'm so thankful that it was like my mother, God rest her soul, was looking over me. I had this guardian angel, and am I going to tell you that I loved every single day that I was there? No, because that would be false. But I was lucky enough to get in at a time when, fortunately, you didn't have to have college. You could go somewhere without. Nowadays, if you don't have college, you're nowhere. Nothing.
Not necessarily, though.
Well, right, not necessarily. That's correct. However,
it wasn't as big.
Correct.
A deal like back then.
You could certainly climb the ladder back then. And I mean, I'll as we go on, I can get to more stories with you. But one of the people that I grew up with in the company, and I was there before him. But do you know who Bob Iger is?
Yeah.
He's the chairman. He's the
Disney.
He and I were studio supervisors together. Wow. But he and I and a number of other people were studio supervisors together, and many people didn't know how. I'm not going to say close I was with him, but we were. I always called him Bob, and he always called me either Needles or Alan. And many years later, they had called me out to help out for a week in California at a show called Port Charles and General Hospital. And I was on the General Hospital lot working, and we were taking a 5, and this was as a stage manager, and all of these people saw these cars drive up, and they thought maybe it was somebody from like Grey's Anatomy or something who used the studio, and they said, who the hell is what's going on here? And it was actually Bob Iger who came to see how I was doing over at General Hospital to see. Yeah. So, and a couple of years ago, when he was at Good Morning America watching the Thanksgiving Day parade, he had, got somebody on the phone to say hello to me, and so I don't call him, nor have I only had the opportunity to call him once when a good friend of mine was fired, and I asked that he call me back in the control room, and he did. And I'm outside of the studio floor, and all the directors are, stop, cut. And they're like, Alan, you have to come in the control room. Like, what's the matter? And they said, Bob Iger's on the phone for you. How do you know Bob Iger? I said, shh, I don't have time to talk. I'll come. And I pick up the phone. Oh, Bob. And to make a long story short, there was a good friend of mine who was a gentleman by the name of Ron Rhodes, who was unceremoniously let go from the department that we used to work in together. And I said, you can't allow this. I mean, he's been with the company so long. You can't allow Ron Rhodes to be let go. And this was a Friday. He said, relax, take it easy. Tell Ron to take it easy. I'll take care of everything. And by Monday, he was back working with a different department. I mean, he was working for ABC News. So yeah, sometimes I'm going to tell you that there was a time I was always very well liked because I grew up there, and I also grew out there. But there was a time that I could walk down 66th Street, and if I was walking down 66th Street with the Pope, people would say, who's that with needles? So, yeah, I mean, I'm serious.
Well, obviously, you were advised to go check out the studios. When do you go from being payroll to involved in productions?
Again, in the same department, I began moving up the line. I went from a payroll clerk. I went to becoming a scheduling supervisor. So now I would get these orders from the shows, and I would have to schedule the people who worked on the shows. Like I said, the stage managers, all of these people. Here's my line. I went from payroll clerk to scheduling clerk. Then from scheduling, I went to a job called studio supervisor, which is the same thing I did with Bob and other people as well. But we were assigned, on a given day, we were assigned a given studio, and we were responsible for all of the people that answered to production services to support people. We were their immediate supervisor in the studio. And if the producers had any complaints or anything about them, they would come to us as the on-site person who was in charge of those people. So that was studio supervisor.
What productions were going on besides soap operas at these studios?
Obviously, we always had the news. We supplied the people to WABC, but we never went. They had their own people to take care of, like Eyewitness News. But there was game shows, there was news, there was elections. One of the big feathers in our cap was ABC was the network of the Olympics. So we always had these big things going on. In addition to, there were always specials. We did a summer special with Alan King as the executive producer, a show called The Corner Bar. And it was all like, kind of people hanging out in a bar. It was an old-time version of Cheers, if you will. But there was always lots to do. The studios, some of the studios worked 7 days a week, 20 hours a day. And that's in addition to the soap studios. The soap studios, as Bruce told you, that's a totally different entity because the changeover of sets and the trucking and the warehousing and all of those logistics that had to be worked out. But for instance, we had a studio on 58th Street. We called it TV 15, but it was the real name for it was the Elysee, ELYSEE, the Elysee Theater, 202 West 58th Street. That's where they did the Dick Cavett show. So Dick Cavett was doing 5 days a week. But then, shortly after the Dick Cavett show ended, they decided that was the optimum place to put game shows. And ABC bought the rights to the $10,000 pyramid from CBS. So they put the $10,000 pyramid in the Elysee Theater, and game shows became a very big thing on the networks. The networks were like, wow, we're making money here. Spin the wheel. So they had other shows that the pyramid would knock down, and then a show called Blankety Blanks would come in. It wasn't on a very long time. And then another show called The Big Showdown. All kinds of things would come in. So we were always very, very busy.
And so you were doing this